The Earth floated like a blue jewel in the endless black of space, silent and still, as if it was holding its breath. The massive communication towers around the planet stood tall, their antennas searching the stars for a signal that never came. Inside the orbital command center, the lights were dim, the air heavy with worry. Admiral Raines stood in front of the wide tactical screen, his arms crossed tightly. His eyes were fixed on one glowing section of the star map where a cluster of blue icons had been. Now they were gone, replaced by empty darkness. 72. Hours had passed since the Ninth Fleet should have sent their check-in signal. 72 hours of silence, not a single transmission, not even static. It was as if they had vanished from the universe. Raines' jaw tightened. His voice was low, almost to himself. "We warned them," he said. "They didn't listen." A junior officer nearby looked up from his console, ready to ask what the Admiral meant. But the cold look in Raines' eyes made him stay silent. Outside the station's wide viewport, dozens of civilian ships drifted in the docking lanes. Their captains and passengers were restless. Everyone had heard the rumors that the Ninth Fleet had been sent to face something dangerous beyond the borders of known space. No one knew exactly what that something was, but every story was worse than the last. Some said it was the alien coalition, finally ready to wipe humanity from the stars. Others whispered about a weapon so terrible it could make entire fleets disappear without leaving a single piece of wreckage. In the command center, the silence was broken only by the soft beeping of scanning systems. Each beep was another second that the fleet stayed missing. Commander Hale, the intelligence officer, stepped closer to Raines. "Sir, the diplomatic channel to the coalition remains unanswered," Hale said quietly. "No reply to the ultimatum." Raines did not look away from the map. "Then they have made their choice," he said. His voice carried no anger, only a sharp finality. The ultimatum had been Earth's last attempt at peace 1 week ago. The High Council had sent the message across the galaxy: withdraw your forces from human colonies or face war. The coalition's answer had been silence. That silence had sent the Ninth Fleet out to the very edge of coalition space. 12 massive warships, 6 carriers, and a swarm of escort destroyers. The largest fleet Earth had ever sent on a single mission, and now it was gone. Technicians worked without pause, rerouting every satellite, scanning every deep space channel, trying to pick up anything from the missing fleet. All they got were faint bursts of static, like echoes from a faraway storm. One burst came through so sharply that a young comms officer leaned forward. Frowning, he played it back. The room fell still. It was nothing but noise, yet buried deep inside the static there was something, a rhythm, like a heartbeat. It was strange enough to make the officer's hands sweat. He decided to run it. Through the audio filters, Admiral Raines watched him. "Report," the officer hesitated. "It could be random static, sir, but it feels artificial." Raines walked over, listening closely. The sound was faint, pulsing slowly, like something alive. His gaze flicked to the map, to the last recorded position of the fleet. "Mark that audio file," he ordered. "We'll send it to analysis." The station's artificial night cycle was in effect, but no one was resting. Outside the large windows, the curve of Earth was lit by city lights. Humanity was still going about its life, unaware that its strongest defense might already be gone. In the hangars below, small patrol craft came and went, scanning the space lanes for unusual movement. Every captain returning from patrol reported the same thing: nothing. Just the emptiness of deep space. A group of junior officers huddled in the mess hall, speaking in low voices. "I heard they were ambushed before they even reached coalition space," one said. "No debris means they were pulled into some kind of rift." Another replied, "Maybe the coalition has a new weapon," a third whispered. All their voices dropped further when they saw Admiral Raines walk past. His expression told them more than words could. Something was wrong, badly wrong, far above Earth. A massive defense platform rotated slowly, its cannons glinting in the faint light. It was built to protect the planet from invasion, but against an enemy that could erase an entire fleet without warning. Its weapons might mean nothing. Rains knew this, and it gnawed at him like an old wound. He turned away from the viewport, his boots echoing on the metal floor. "We can't wait forever," he told Hala. "If they don't report in within the next 24 hours, we move to Phase 2. Hala hesitated. "That means war, sir." Rain stopped and looked at him. "It means survival," he said simply. The weight of his words seemed to fill the room, and for a long moment no one spoke. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant, each one a reminder of how small and fragile Earth was in the vast galaxy, somewhere out there. 12 great warships were either fighting for their lives or already gone, and if the latter was true, then something powerful was moving toward Earth. The faint heartbeat-like signal played again in the background, steady and slow. Rains felt a chill run through him. It was not the sound of hope, but a warning, and whatever it meant, he knew one thing: time was running out. 1 week earlier, the air inside the High Council chamber had been tense enough to break. The long table of polished steel reflected the pale glow of the holographic star map floating above it, showing the outer colonies and the borders of the alien coalition. Every council member knew the truth. Humanity's colonies were being taken one by one, not with grand invasions, but with quiet, steady pressure. And the coalition wasn't even pretending to hide it anymore. The chamber's massive viewing screen flickered to life, and the message began transmitting. Admiral Rain stood at the center, his voice steady but sharp as a blade. "To the leadership of the coalition," he said, "withdraw your fleets from human colony space immediately. You have 24 hours to respond. If you refuse, we will consider your silence an act of war." His words echoed in the room even after the feed cut, leaving behind the low hum of the station's power systems. Everyone in the chamber knew the coalition would not respond. They had not spoken directly to Earth in almost 3 years, choosing instead to communicate through intercepted transmissions, propaganda broadcasts, and sudden military exercises near human colonies. But still, the ultimatum had to be given. Diplomacy was a ritual, even when it was only a formality. Before bloodshed, Rains had walked out of that meeting with a single order burning in his mind: prepare the 9th Fleet. It would be the largest deployment since the Titan rebellions. 12 capital ships, 6 carriers, dozens of destroyers and support craft. It was not just a military force, it was a message carved in steel. Humanity will not be pushed aside. In the days that followed, Earth's orbital shipyards worked without pause. Construction crews clanged. Along the armored hulls, engineers swarmed like ants over the towering warships. Each vessel gleamed under the floodlights, massive battleships with thick armor plating, carrier decks stretching like steel planes, destroyers built for speed and precision strikes. At night, when the work lights dimmed, the shadows of the ships loomed like giants over the stations below. Among the workers and dock crews, rumors moved faster than official reports. Some claimed the coalition had a fleet twice the size of the 9th, waiting just beyond the jump point. Others said the aliens had developed a new form of weapon, something that could erase a ship without leaving even dust. A few whispered about stranger things, about ships vanishing into corridors of light, never to emerge. On the day of departure, the docks were lined with civilians. Families came to see the fleet off, waving from observation decks and transport shuttles. Some smiled with pride, others held back tears. In the crowd, a young boy pressed his hands against the glass, staring wide-eyed at the massive form of the flagship, the HMS Resolute. Its hull was dark and unmarked, save for the silver crest of the 9th Fleet and the Earth emblem, a blue and green sphere. Inside the Resolute's command deck, Captain Alara Voss stood tall before her crew. Her uniform was sharp, her voice calm but fierce. "We have been given a task," she said, "not just to defend our colonies, but to remind the galaxy that humanity is not prey. We go to meet an enemy who believes we are weak. We will show them the cost of that mistake." The crew answered with a firm, unified, "Yes, Captain." The sound echoing off the steel walls, the order to launch came over the coms, and the shipyards trembled as the massive engines came to life. One by one, the great ships of the Ninth Fleet slid from their berths into the cold black. Their thrusters flared blue and white, casting long shadows across the hulls from the observation decks. The people of Earth watched their defenders vanish into the deep. The fleet moved in perfect formation toward the outer rim. The final signal from Earth followed them into the void, a simple, encrypted transmission repeating the ultimatum one last time. No reply came. Hours passed, then days. The fleet approached the designated jump corridor that would take them into Coalition space. That was when the first signs of trouble began. A destroyer at the far edge of the formation reported strange readings, faint distortions in the corridor's energy pattern. The nav officers ran diagnostics but found no mechanical fault. Captain Voss ordered the readings logged and the course maintained. But the tension on the bridge grew heavier. As the fleet entered the corridor, the distortions grew worse. Lights flickered across the ships, sensor readings spiked and dropped. The comms channels filled with bursts of static. Somewhere in the middle of the fleet, a carrier reported losing power to half its systems for nearly 30 seconds, before recovering without explanation. The last clear transmission from the Resolute came only hours after entering the corridor. It was a clipped, urgent voice. "Admiral, we have contact, multiple, unknown. They're inside the..." Then the channel dissolved into a wave of static, so loud and sharp that it made technicians on Earth pull off their headsets. Back in the High Council chamber, the listening officers replayed that final burst again and again, trying to pull meaning from the noise. Some swore they could hear metallic echoes, like claws scraping across steel. Others claimed there was a voice under the static, repeating a sequence of numbers. When the official report reached Admiral Rains, he read it in silence. His eyes moved over the final words. "Fleet status unknown. No further transmissions. Recommend immediate strategic review." He closed the file, his face unreadable in that moment. The Ninth Fleet was no longer a mission. It was a question, one that hung over Earth like a shadow, and though no one in the chamber said it aloud, they all felt the same cold truth pressing in on them. Whatever had taken the fleet might not stop there. The Ninth Fleet was a sight to burn itself into memory forever. 12 great warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the pale light of distant stars. Massive carriers, shaped like steel islands, carried squadrons of fighters within their armored bellies. Battleships bristled with long-range rail cannons and missile pods, their engines glowing like the eyes of some ancient machine god. Around them darted destroyers and escorts, fast and agile, weaving between the giants like wolves among elephants. From Earth's orbit, they looked almost peaceful, drifting away from home with steady grace. But inside the ships, the atmosphere was tense. Orders were short, precise. Every crew member knew this was not a training exercise. This was the first major fleet deployment against the Coalition in almost a decade, and no one knew if they would return on the flagship HMS Resolute. Captain Elara Voss stood in the observation lounge, watching the planet shrink in the distance. Her reflection in the glass looked like a ghost against the stars. She thought about the ultimatum, about the silence that followed, and about the fact that silence from the Coalition had never meant anything good. Her second-in-command, Commander Reese Calder, stepped up beside her. "Fleet holding formation." "Captain," he said. "All ships reporting green across the board." She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the shrinking Earth. "Green today," she murmured. "Let's hope it stays that way." Far below deck, the hangar bays were alive with movement. Engineers checked and rechecked fighter systems. Pilots ran last-minute diagnostics on their cockpits. The smell of coolant and machine oil hung in the air. Tech crews shouted over the roar of idling. Thrusters on one corner of the bay. A group of young pilots stood in a tight circle, one of them holding a small hollow projector that displayed a blurry image of the Coalition's warships. It was a grainy capture from a border skirmish, a dark spined silhouette against a red star, bristling with weapons no human had ever seen in use. "They say those things can slice a destroyer in half with one shot," one pilot said. Others didn't laugh. Rumors in space had a habit of coming true. Back on the bridge, the navigation team prepared the jump sequence. The fleet's destination lay at the far edge of human space, where the jump corridor would take them into contested territory. From there, they would advance toward Coalition patrol lines and either force a retreat or engage directly. The countdown began. "Jump in 60 seconds, the nav officer announced, across the fleet. Voices repeated the same phrase. Engineers sealed reactor cores. Weapon crews locked targeting systems, fighter pilots strapped in. The lights dimmed to combat readiness, bathing the ships in red glow. When the timer reached 0, the jump corridor unfolded before them. It was not a physical thing, not in the way planets or stars were. Instead, it was a shimmering tunnel of distorted light. Stretching far into the black, faint arcs of energy crawled along its surface like lightning trapped. In glass, the ships accelerated, one by one slipping into the corridor. Inside the jump, space felt wrong. The view from the bridge windows was a blur of colors and shifting shadows. The air itself seemed heavier. The Resolute sensors flickered with false readings, phantom contacts, sudden drops in power that lasted only seconds. Halfway through the corridor, a warning came from the ISS Blackthorn, a destroyer near the front. "Captain, we're detecting anomalies ahead." The voice on COM sounded unsure. The readings were unstable, pockets of space folding in on themselves, patterns that didn't match any known gravitational distortion. Captain Voss ordered a cautious formation shift, pulling the destroyers closer to the carriers for protection. But the anomalies didn't fade. They grew stronger, forming black knots of swirling darkness in the corridor walls. Each one pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Could be sensor malfunction, Calder suggested quietly, but even he didn't sound convinced. The fleet pressed on. But the COM channels began to pick up faint noise. At first it was like static, but then it became something else, a low, rhythmic pulse. The sound repeated at perfect intervals. Every ship in the fleet reported hearing it. Then came the first real shock. The HM's Harbinger, a cruiser in the middle ranks, reported a complete sensor blackout. For 30 seconds, the ship was flying blind. When the systems came back, the crew swore they had been surrounded by shapes. They couldn't describe them, only that they didn't move like ships, didn't look like anything human or alien. Voss ordered all ships to stay on high alert. Weapons were charged but held in reserve. If the Coalition was behind this, they were playing a game humanity had never seen before. Hours later, as the fleet neared the end of the corridor, the distortion spiked. The walls of the tunnel rippled like water under a strong wind, and the rhythmic pulse grew faster, louder. "This isn't natural," the nav officer said, his voice tight. "Something's inside the corridor with us." Before Voss could respond, the Resolute's forward cameras caught a flash, a ripple of black cutting across the corridor like a shadow from nowhere. It moved fast, impossibly fast. One moment it was ahead of them, the next it was gone. The comms exploded with chatter from multiple ships. "Unidentified contact. It's inside our hull. No, it's everywhere." And then one final message, cut short by static, from the HMS Resolute's comms officer. "Admiral, we have contact, multiple, unknown. They're inside the..." The words dissolved into white noise. The Ninth Fleet sailed on into the distortion. But no further messages would ever make it home. The corridor closed behind them, leaving nothing but empty space where they had entered. Far away, in Earth's command center, the tactical map went dark where the Ninth Fleet had been. The icons faded one by one, leaving only silence. And somewhere inside that silence, a faint pulse began to echo, slow, steady, and impossibly far away, asterisk. Shadow's Edge was not built for glory. It was a small stealth frigate, painted in light-absorbing alloys, its surface broken by sharp angles that scattered enemy scans. It carried no massive cannons, no squadrons of fighters. Its strength was invisibility. It could slip into places where fleets would be torn apart, and right now, it was humanity's only hope of finding out what happened to the Ninth Fleet. The orders had been simple. Admiral Rains gave them in the quiet of the orbital command center. You go in, you look, you come back. No heroics, no fights. If you find survivors, you tag their location and get out. If you find nothing, you get out faster. His eyes had lingered on the captain of the Shadow's Edge. Kira Maddox, no one else is coming after you, do you understand? Maddox had only nodded once. She didn't ask about reinforcements. She didn't ask why she was being sent instead of a rescue fleet. She already knew the answer. No one wanted to risk more ships until they knew what had destroyed the Ninth. Frigate slipped out of Earth's orbit under full stealth protocols. Engines barely humming, transponders dead. Every panel inside the ship glowed with dim red light to keep their energy signature low. The crew moved in silence, each step muffled by sound deadening plating. They all knew they were heading into the nebula, the last place the Ninth had been. Detected, a region of space with no mapped corridors and a reputation for swallowing ships whole. The nebula came into view like a wound in the sky, swirling clouds of deep violet and black, lit from within by flashes of cold lightning. Sensors struggled to get accurate readings. The gases were thick, charged with static. Every scan came back with interference. Crossing the perimeter, reported the helm officer. Maddox leaned forward in her command chair, eyes scanning the shifting clouds ahead. Take us in slow, eyes open. Passive scans only. The moment they entered, the outside view turned hazy. The stars vanished behind curtains of gas. Lightning flared, throwing jagged shadows across the frigate's hull. The crew felt it immediately. The air seemed heavier. The ship's hull groaned softly, as if something unseen was pressing on it. Minutes turned into hours, until finally, the sensor officer spoke. Captain, I've got something. Bearing 097, range 12,000 clicks, could be wreckage. Maddox stood, visual. The forward screens flickered, then resolved into the image of a drifting shape. As they closed the distance, its details emerged. A massive scorched battleship, half its hull torn away. The designation was still visible on one side. HMS Valiant, one of the Ninth Fleet's core warships. Life signs? Maddox asked. Negative, came the reply. But, Captain, I'm reading something strange. Energy emissions near the bow, not from the ship. Looks like an object, spherical. The Shadow's Edge inched closer until the object came into view. It was black as the void, perfectly smooth, about the size of a fighter cockpit. It floated just meters from the torn edge of the Valiant's hull. Lightning flared through the nebula, and for a second, the sphere reflected it, not as a mirror, but in a way that bent the light unnaturally. Scan it, Maddox ordered. The moment the scan beam touched the sphere, the bridge speakers crackled. That sound faint, rhythmic pulses, slow and deliberate. The same pattern Admiral Rains had played in the command center when the Ninth first went missing. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Maddox kept her voice steady. Bring it aboard, quarantine protocols, full containment. The retrieval team worked fast, pulling the sphere into an isolation chamber deep in the frigate's hull. No one touched it directly. Robotic arms moved it into a magnetic suspension field. The surface gave no heat, no radiation, nothing that made sense. Back on the bridge, the scan of the Valiant continued. The damage was strange. No signs of impact weapons, no scorch marks from energy beams. Whole sections of the hull were simply gone, as if erased. Inside, the corridors were twisted and warped, like metal melted from the inside out. A boarding team suited up. The Valiant's interior was dead silent. Lights flickered in some sections. But there was no power, no sound. Of air systems, the walls bore long, shallow grooves, claw marks. But not like any claws a human or known alien could make. In the main data center, they found what they were looking for. The ship's logs, damaged but partially recoverable. The last entry from the captain was broken into fragments. Contact inside the corridor. They're not ships. There, the recording ended in static. Then came something unexpected. The ship's AI core was missing. The whole unit had been cut out and removed, but cables and ports around the missing slot were scorched, as if the removal had been violent. Back aboard the Shadow's edge, the sphere in quarantine began to emit faint vibrations. The rhythmic pulse grew louder, and then it spoke. The voice was not human, not alien in any familiar sense. It was layered, mechanical, but almost whispering. They came from inside your corridors. The crew froze. Maddox moved closer to the comms panel. "Who are you?" she asked. The sphere paused. "Prisoner," it said. "Enemy to your enemy." The words chilled the air on the bridge. Maddox exchanged a glance with her chief engineer. They both knew what it implied. Whatever had destroyed the Ninth Fleet wasn't the Coalition. Before they could ask more, the proximity alarm screamed. Multiple contacts appeared on sensors. Moving fast through the nebula, their readings were distorted, shape-shifting in impossible ways. The sphere spoke again. "They found you." Maddox didn't hesitate. "All power to engines. Get us out." The Shadow's edge turned hard, engines roaring. Lightning flashed outside and through it. Maddox saw a shadow, tall, thin, moving like liquid through the void. Then another and another, closing in. The stealth frigate vanished into the nebula's deeper clouds. The hunters in pursuit, carrying with them the truth. The Ninth Fleet had not been destroyed in battle. It had been taken. And the enemy was already searching for Earth. The Shadow's edge drifted in total silence, hidden deep in the nebula's blackest shadows. The crew moved like ghosts, speaking in low tones, their eyes darting to the sealed quarantine chamber where the sphere floated. No one wanted to get too close to it, yet no one could stop glancing at it either. It was like a single drop of night had been stolen from the void and trapped in their ship. Captain Maddox stood at the head of the bridge, hands clasped behind her back. Her mind replayed the image of the Ninth Fleet's wreckage, the smooth erasure of steel, the claw marks gouged deep into bulkheads. None of it matched any known Coalition weapon. And then there was the sphere's voice, cold, layered, whispering like it spoke from a great distance. "They came from inside your corridors." Now the sphere hovered under a constant scan, its surface still flawless, still without a single readable emission except for that strange pulse. The ship's chief engineer, Danner, was hunched over the console, eyes flicking between data streams. "It's not just broadcasting, Captain," he said. "It's listening. The pulse changes whenever we move or speak near it." "Alive?" Maddox asked. Danner hesitated. "Maybe, or something pretending to be alive." The comms officer's voice broke the tension. "Captain, we've decoded more of the Valiant's logs." Maddox turned sharply. "Play it." The bridge filled with static, then a broken voice. The Valiant's captain, breathless, panicked. "Contact in the corridor. They're not ships. They move through the walls. No engines, no mass. A loud screeching sound cut through the recording, metallic but somehow wet. The log ended abruptly. No one spoke for several seconds. The air in the bridge seemed colder. Maddox ordered the boarding team to search deeper into the wrecks. The next target was the HMS Resolute, the Ninth Fleet's flagship. It took hours to navigate through the nebula's twisting lanes, lightning flashing in the distance like silent war drums, when the Resolute came into view. It was far worse than the Valiant. The ship was cracked in two, its aft section spiraling slowly away. The fracture lines were too clean, too precise. Like a surgeon's cut on a colossal scale, whole decks were simply gone, stripped bare of air, gravity, and life. A boarding team launched, their small shuttle gliding into the gaping wound in the flagship's hull. Inside, the silence was absolute. The corridors were warped and stretched, as though the ship's metal had been pulled like soft clay. In some sections, the walls were paper thin, in others they were fused solid. The team reached the bridge. Its glass canopy was shattered, shards drifting like frozen snow in the dead air. Consoles were dark, but a single emergency beacon blinked weakly in the corner. They accessed its data core and found partial logs. Most were corrupted beyond repair, but one fragment survived. It showed Captain Ilara Voss standing on the bridge. The recording flickered and warped, but her voice was clear. "It's not the Coalition. Tell Earth." Then her body jerked sideways, as if yanked by an invisible force, and the recording ended. When the boarding team returned, they also brought back something else, found lodged in a twisted section of the hull, a fragment of alien metal unlike anything in human records. It was impossibly light, yet unbreakable, and its surface was covered in shallow grooves that pulsed faintly. The grooves formed no language the ship's systems could translate. Back aboard the Shadow's edge, the sphere reacted the moment the fragment was brought inside. The pulse from the sphere changed. Speeding up, the voice returned. "Enemy tools, enemy hands, they are not gone." Maddox stepped closer to the quarantine field. "What are they?" she asked. The sphere's answer was slow. "Harvesters, older than your worlds. They build from what they take, and they take everything." The bridge crew traded uneasy glances. Maddox asked the next question carefully. "Did you destroy the Ninth Fleet?" "No," the sphere replied. "I was prisoner in their path. They freed me without knowing. They thought I was weapon. I am not. I am warning." Before Maddox could press further, the proximity alarm screamed again. Multiple contacts, closing. Fast, the shapes were the same impossible distortion seen before. Long, thin shadows slipping between points in space, as if distance meant nothing. The sphere pulsed harder. "They found you again," Maddox barked orders. "All hands, battle stations, full burn out of the nebula." The frigate's engines roared, flaring bright against the darkness. Lightning flashed, and in that blinding light, the crew saw them, forms like jagged spires of black glass, moving without thrust, their limbs stretching and folding in unnatural ways. Weapons fired, but the bolts passed through the shapes as if they were smoke. The Shadow's edge weaved through the debris field, passing shattered hulls and drifting panels. Maddox ordered flares and countermeasures, hoping to disrupt whatever sensors the creatures used. Behind them, the predators moved closer. The hull shuddered as one of the shapes scraped alongside, leaving no mark but making the entire ship vibrate with a low, bone-deep hum. The crew felt it in their teeth, their skulls. Danner's voice came over the comms. "Captain, the spheres. Output just spiked. I think it's interfering with them. They're slowing." Maddox didn't hesitate. Routed signal through the comm array. Max broadcast. The frigate's antennas flared with invisible power. The shapes twitched, their movements breaking rhythm. One by one, they began to drift backward, vanishing into the nebula's deeper clouds. When the danger passed, the bridge was silent but for the hum of the engines. Maddox stared at the sphere through the quarantine glass. "Why help us?" she asked. "Because they will not stop with you," the sphere replied. "Your corridors lead home, and home is where they feed next." Maddox turned to her crew. "Plot a course to Earth, maximum speed. They need to hear this now." But in the back of her mind, she knew the truth. The hunters had let them go, and the real war hadn't even started yet. Asterisk, the Shadow's edge tore through the black, engines burning hotter than they were ever meant to. Every vibration in the hull was a reminder that the ship was one push away from tearing itself apart. But Captain Maddox didn't care. The mission had changed. It wasn't about finding the Ninth Fleet anymore. It was about warning Earth. Before the harvesters reached Sol, the sphere sat in its quarantine chamber, still suspended in its magnetic field. Its pulse had steadied since the encounter in the nebula, but now it felt heavier somehow, like each beat carried weight on the bridge. No one took their eyes off the star map. The harvesters had fallen back. For now, they're not gone. Danner muttered from the engineering console. You don't pull back from prey unless you know where it's going. Maddox glanced at him but didn't argue. She'd been thinking the same thing since they left the nebula. The comms officer broke the silence. Captain, I've got the IS full translation on the fragment from the Resolute. Maddox turned. Let's hear it. The voice that came through the speakers was the Sphere's. But clearer now, less whisper and more iron. The harvesters do not move through space. They move through the folds that bind it, your jump. Corridors are their veins, your ships are their blood, your people are their harvest. The words hung in the air like ice. Maddox felt her stomach tighten. How long? She asked. The sphere pulsed. The paths you cut into the void weaken it. They feed on the tension. The first wave will reach your home within one of your months. That number hit harder than enemy fire. A month. Maybe less if the creatures moved faster than predicted. Maddox turned back to the helm. Push the drive to 60% over safety margin. The helmsman hesitated. Captain, that could do it, Maddox snapped. The stars outside became long streaks as the frigate tore through jump after jump. Their course was direct. Number stops, no detours. Every system groaned under the strain. And the crew's eyes were starting to show that sharp, brittle edge that came from too many days without rest. On the third day, the sensors lit up. Contacts. The tactical officer reported 3 ships human design. The bridge stirred. Survivors? Maddox ordered visual confirmation. The screen flickered, showing 3 coalition destroyers drifting ahead, their hulls blackened, their lights dead. Not ours. Calder said flatly. Coalition patrol, probably caught in the same net as the 9th. Maddox ordered a wide berth, but as they passed, the crew could see the same surgical damage as on the human ships. Clean cuts through armor, strange grooves carved into the metal. No bodies floated inside, only empty corridors. Hours later, another contact appeared, this one alive. A small human scout craft broadcasting a distress beacon. Maddox brought them aboard. The single pilot was pale, his eyes bloodshot. His voice shook when he spoke. It wasn't the coalition, he said before anyone could ask. They came out of the jump corridor. They didn't shoot, didn't fire. They just came inside. His description matched what they'd seen. The shapes that moved without engines, passing through hulls like smoke. They didn't kill us right away, the pilot whispered. They studied us like we were machines. And then I woke up here. No one asked what happened in between. The sphere spoke again later, when Maddox stood alone in the quarantine chamber. You understand now, it said. Your war with the coalition is meaningless. They are prey as you are. The only victory is to close the corridors. To starve them, that's impossible, Maddox said. Shut the corridors and we cut ourselves off from half our colonies. The sphere's pulse slowed. Better lost than eaten. The bridge lights shifted suddenly to combat red. Contacts. The tactical officer shouted, multiple, closing fast. The hunters were back. They're black, jagged silhouettes slipping into real space ahead of the frigate. Maddox cursed. Evasive pattern delta, route the sphere's signal through weapons. Array, the frigate twisted through the void. The hunters changing position without visible movement. 1 second they were far ahead. The next they were alongside. A low vibration filled the ship. The same hum they'd felt before, only this time. The sphere's pulse answered it, a counter rhythm that made the shadows hesitate. Drive's peaking. We can't keep this up, Danner warned. Then give me one more burst, Maddox said. The frigate's engine screamed. The stars flared white, and the ship tore past the hunters, leaving them in the glare. They didn't chase. Instead, they hung there in the void, slowly fading from sight. Maddox didn't know if they were beaten back or just letting the shadow's edge run. The final stretch to Earth felt longer than all the jumps before. Every shadow outside the hull looked like it might move. Every flicker on the sensors made hearts skip. Maddox barely slept, and when she did, she dreamed of corridors filled with long black spires reaching for her ship. When Sol finally appeared on the nav display, the crew almost cheered. But Maddox's gut told her this wasn't the end, only the first move in something much larger. The sphere's final words before they crossed into Earth space only confirmed it. They took the 9th Fleet, it said. They will take the next. And when the corridors are full of your ships, they will come for your home. 1 month is the time you have left. And as the blue curve of Earth rose in the viewport, Maddox felt no relief, only the weight of a war her people didn't even know had begun.